Patrick Vellner talked about the balloons.
Yeah, it's like a box.
You have a box and you have 4 balloons in it, and the volume is fixed in that box. At full inflation, not all 4 balloons can fit in there. Call 1 family, 1 work, 1 working out, and 1 food. If you're going to blow the workout balloon the whole way up, you're going to have to deflate those other 3. And as you set priorities, is that you don't overset priorities with deflating other things. Saves a ton of time to be extremely proactive about where we're taking energy away from. More is not always more. You get overexcited and you start to say yes to too many things, and yes to like, oh, well, this worked, let's do this, and then let's do this. And then all of a sudden you realize the thing that's driving the most success in our inventory, where the top 20% of products are driving 90% of revenue, that isn't just an inventory thing. That applies to so many things we're doing here. That's where not only the discipline of defining the volume of each of those balloons and the priority they have, it does take an extreme level of discipline to be saying no the majority of the time.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. You got me and Big Tone today. We're gonna hit a 2-part episode here. This obviously will be part 1, and really just kind of want to debrief a little bit of the year, kind of on the Born Primitive front, but also the personal front. Get into some lessons learned, maybe things we could have done differently, and maybe some things that we thought really worked for us. And I think also weaving in some entrepreneurial lessons, not just for Born Primitive. So hopefully this will be a good way to kind of close things out. Appreciate everyone who's followed along throughout the year. We'll be hitting obviously plenty more episodes as we go into the new year, but we thought this was a good way to kind of close it out. But how we doing, Tom?
Good.
Feeling good?
Good morning.
Friday.
Yeah.
It's quiet.
Yeah, we got our Christmas party.
The Christmas party tonight.
Mike, who's also Bear's brother, said this needs to be the last year we do it at HQ. He said,
I agree.
I
agree.
What's funny, and I don't even think I told him this, is do you know why it's at HQ?
Well, probably because it's way cheaper.
We're kicking off on the business front. It's because a year and a half to 2 years ago, not that we were in a bad place as a business, but things had tightened up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, of course, Mao, who's been on the podcast before, it was decided, to save a couple extra dollars. We
were getting quotes at like, oh, let's do it this like hotel and this and that. And it's like, all right, we're not spending $40,000 for one part. Like, we'll get a heated tent, give them some booze.
It's been fun every year.
You know what I mean?
So.
But it's like, oh, this is where we come to work every day. So it's like, it's like, all right, maybe you don't. But at the new place, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Because that'll be epic.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Well, let's, I'd love to start, like there's been a lot of things that have happened this year here at Born Primitive. And I think that's obvious even to an outward facing or to our customers and consumers, that like some huge activations surrounding D-Day, Veterans Day, as well as just the introduction of new verticals, the outdoor, tactical, Savage One, our main athletic apparel. Just in candid honesty, it's been a great year for business, but there's a lot on the horizon too. So I would love, Bear, we've talked, I think you've talked openly about kind of the new HQ we're building, as well as some potential kind of taking on an outside investment or a partner here in the next year to 3 years. So start with the building. Like what is in the works with that? What is the upside there as an owner, both culturally, but then walk us through that process, just because I know there's been a ton going on in the background for the new HQ that's being built.
Good question. So let me explain it from the context of like an entrepreneurial's angle here, and why you want to be the landlord and the tenant anytime you can be. So if you're a business owner and you can also be an owner of the building that you're occupying, and it would be a separate LLC, the rent of organization A is paying the mortgage for organization B. So if you're the owner of both, you're taking money out of one pocket and putting in the other. Whereas before, obviously, you cut up $10,000 rent check every month or whatever it is. Right now, it's probably $40,000. It's going down a black hole because there's another landlord getting rich off of you, right? And he's building equity on that property, and over time, you know what I mean? And that's the business they're in. So if you possess the means to do it, eventually, if you do own a business, that's an incredible way. It's a long-term wealth play, because if you know your business is going to be around for a really long time, why not pay yourself rent, right? Particularly, if you have the ability to buy land, you can build a facility specific to your needs. If you're going to be in that thing for the next 15 years, and every time, our mortgage on this next building might be $100,000, right? So rent will be $100,000, mortgage will be $100,000. So Every month there's going to be a wire that takes place. And guess what? I own both bank accounts. So it doesn't matter, right? And every month I own a little bit more principal on the property, a very expensive property, right? Eventually I'm going to own that outright and there's going to be no payment. And we've set it up in a way where in Virginia Beach, it's a port city next to Norfolk. Industrial space will always be, high demand. You run a little risk of making something too custom. That, hey, all right, 5 years this business doesn't exist. I got to be able to rent the damn thing.
Yep.
So ours is built in a way, with the front office and then warehouse behind it. It'll be we could rent it in 2 seconds. We've actually had people hitting us up saying, hey, can we carve out 10,000 of the warehouse? Like, we'll sign a 10-year lease right now. And we're like, no. So there's some security there on like, all right, if a contingency were to occur, are you now on the hook for $100,000 mortgage payment that you don't have a business in it anymore, right? So you gotta consider those things, but we're very protected from that. We rent, we own this office right now. So we own the office, but as you know, we have 3 warehouses now that we rent. I don't own those. So every month that check stings a little bit because I know it's going to somebody else. But ultimately we will have the whole company consolidated under one building. It'll probably be a $16 or $17 million facility. Eventually that'll be a $40 million building that I don't know anything on. Right. Hopefully many years from now. And then you can make a decision. Do I rent this thing for $150,000 a month, cash flow 100, you know what I mean? Or do I just sell it, ride off into the sunset? Right. So it's a long-term wealth play. In the moment, you're not going to get rich. You're going to break even, but of course you're going to continue to gain principal. And if property values, I think they go up on average 4% a year. It's not like 10% like the market, but as you're gaining principal for free, basically, and it's going up 4% a year. Of course, there's fluctuations that you can kind of do the math on every year, kind of the wealth you accumulate from that every year, right? So one other thing that I learned from this that's just really cool, and I'm realizing like this is what the big players like in real estate and building like they do, but that first couple years when you build a brand new building, you can depreciate a ton of it. So I don't know what this exact number is going to be, but let's say it's a $16 million building and we can depreciate in year 1 $6 million of it, right? That would be a $6 million loss or a write-off for that business. So if Born Primitive makes a bunch of money, as an owner of Born Primitive, obviously I have to pay a personal income tax because we're an S corp, right? Based on the profits of the company. So I have to cut the check to Uncle Sam for Born Primitive's profits. But if all of a sudden I can have a $6 million deduction from whatever that net profit was at the end of the year, that's a massive savings from an income tax standpoint. So rather than, that money getting wired to Uncle Sam, that's now, money in your pocket. So,
and what allows for that 6 million? Like what allows for the $6 million depreciation?
Because there's components of the building that you can write off in the very first year. So when we build it, the builder will give my accountant like a specific document that itemizes out all the things that it can depreciate. And I'm oversimplifying a little bit. It might be a little bit off on it, but that's the general gist of it. And then your accountant can look at it and be like, hey, well, if we write off all 6 million, like we don't want to do that because you wouldn't want to go into the negative, but hey, we'll write off 4 this year. We'll save 2 for next year. That's 2 years in a row where you've really mitigated your income tax. Right. So that'll be a really cool thing for us. Obviously that's kind of a personal thing. But I think like the lesson learned there is like, I was very aggressive on wanting to do that. That's why we bought this building. I was able to grasp that concept, like 5 years ago and realize this is so dumb.
And did you have a mentor? Did you read a book or was it just something you had thought like, wait a second?
I just kind of thought it through. And then I kind of validated it with my accountant because that's what he does at their building. Gotcha. He owns it and they occupy it as the tenant. He's like, I did this exact same thing. It's a brilliant play. It's, you know what I mean? Now you're always not going to be able to do that. If you're, if you just need like a little spot, 3,000 square feet, like it's probably not worth it going through the ass pain of doing all that. And then you have but if you're a growing business, what we were running into, as you know, Tony, was the growing pains of like, we'd sign a 5-year lease, but 2 years in, we've outgrown it. Right. And I'm like, and then you'd have to like, jump through your ass to find another facility, but then you got to like break a lease. You know what I mean? We kind of got lucky a little bit, but it was like, all right, I want to control my own destiny. I'm just going to project way far out and build just a giant place. And like, all right, if we outgrow that, I can live with that. But I was just sick of like chasing our tail of like finding a facility that could accommodate our growth. So finally, I was like, let's just find some land and do it ourselves. Now it's been a total pain in the ass. And I guess I'll weave that into the next kind of entrepreneurial lesson learned is when you're dealing with like bureaucracy with municipalities and governments in the city, like it, I'll get political real quick, but I'll try to keep it under wraps. The left is obsessed with regulation and red tape. It's like they love it, right? Oh, you got to get this approval, you got to do this approval, the EPA, this and that. When you do that, all you do is stunt growth in every capacity. There's going to be less building projects. There's less infrastructure that needs to get it's literally everything. Right now, we're working with the city. Just yesterday, we found out that we have to install 7-foot diameter pipes as part of our site plan to prep the building, like underground, right? Because they have not upgraded the infrastructure over time like they should as neighborhoods developed in the area where we're building this thing, right? Where they should have, once it got to a certain size, oh, shoot, the 2-foot pipes are no longer sufficient. We got to put the big pipes in because now we have like 60 acres of neighborhoods feeding into this one thing. And I don't fully understand it, but that's the gist of it. So now that we're building this, you know what I mean? They're saying, oh, well, Born Primitive can swap those pipes out. And we kind of have them by the balls, right? So yeah, you guys can install the 7-foot pipes. Well, guess what? That's going to cost us $800,000 or $900,000, right? We're what? We're what? 18 months into this process, right? We've paid engineers hundreds of thousands of dollars. We've gone to back and forth. But you have someone as a city official that has the ultimate power to just make you do whatever they think, right? And it from my optic, it seems like they have to say no initially to justify their job, and it's like they want to make it difficult. And it's like, so if builders in Virginia Beach know every time you go to the city you're going to just deal with 2 years of red tape before you can even break ground, guess what that does? Hey, I'm going to go to Chesapeake. I'm going to go to Norfolk. I'm going to go to a place where the people running that approve things quickly and let us grow shit, right? And it's this like obsession with red tape, and then every thing, it takes 6 weeks to get back to you, and like you just throw your hands up, and it's like, guys, why is this such a slow moving machine? And Trump just put this out a couple of days ago that any investment in the United States over $1 billion will basically get fast tracked for an approval. People have no idea what that will do for growth. It's going to be insane, because I bet there's a lot of people that were maybe holding off on projects, particularly during the Biden administration, when it's like every little thing, you got the environmental component in this, you can't drill, even with the oil. You think these oil guys are going to try to set up a drilling opportunity when they know all the freaking shit they're going to have to go through, and then it can get denied at the 11th hour? Well, guess what? Now we stop drilling, you know what I mean? And now your guess. So there's downstream effects to just the culture that's set at the top. And just dealing with the bureaucracy has been so frustrating, because it doesn't have to be this way. The engineers on our project have been doing this for 30 plus years, right? This is not that hard. It's a warehouse and an office. And now they're trying to say, at the 11th hour, you need to do that, and it's going to be another $900,000. Okay, so because you guys didn't upgrade your infrastructure, I'm now on the hook for basically $1 million added to my budget on this project, and that's it. There's no recourse. That's it. Final answer, really? But that's it. You know what I mean? So guess what? A guy like me in the future, if I get a bunch of extra money and I want to do another real estate project, I'm probably going to explore other options because of that experience. So guess what? Virginia Beach suffers from that because I go to Chesapeake, right? So the growth and the job opportunities in this city are lessened. See what I'm saying? So all of that shit matters. And I think regular people don't understand that. That's why, like, when Trump gets into office and he basically says, hey, we're going to cut all of this bullshit out, you will see things pick up immediately, because guys like me and guys that are way more like dialed than I am, that have like $1 billion projects, they're immediately going to jump back into the ring because they know this is the time to get shit done. You know what I mean? Because who knows what the next administration is going to be. If it's right back to Democrats, they're going to be right back in the same boat. All right, well, if you want to wait 5 years for an approval, you can try it, but you know what I mean? And you're going to waste millions and millions of dollars doing it, or maybe more. So you see what I'm saying? So that was the biggest lesson learned for me, is like, it's super frustrating when people that likely have never run a business in their life have the final sign off on authority that is so fucking important for your own entrepreneurial success, right? And it's just unreasonable, and it's cost of doing business. I understand that, but there has to be a better way. And if you were to put a business owner in that seat, oh my God, imagine the shit that would get done, because they would totally understand where you're coming from. You know what I mean?
Well, that's my next question is like, do you see, can that obviously at a national level, even the $1 billion thing you said, like that will change things, that changes things very quickly, but then trickle that down to the situation you're in. Is there any, because I'm sure the engineers have to open up at some point of like, is it just like, hey man, it's got to kind of just be this way for these reasons? Or is everyone involved kind of, that's not the actual city, just kind of like, this is fucking brutal? Do you know what I mean? Like, is there hope that like, hey, this could actually be reformed and there could be a way to optimize this the way that a for-profit like company would have to? Is there any hope of that, or is that bureaucracy just like the way it's going to be?
In my opinion, this is just my opinion, having worked for the government at one point, that's the culture of working for a government or a municipality. There is no incentive to be like a great pipe hitting employee. Again, there's some great ones. There's obviously good in every bunch, but the overall culture, if you could oversimplify it, is laziness, complacency, 2-hour lunch breaks, don't get back to you on email, take forever to get anything done because you can't fire them, right? Like, imagine a job where all right, unless I light this building on fire, I can't get fucking fired. That's basically working for the fucking government. And that's why, you're going to have a shitstorm with Musk and Vivek when they're like, all these federal employees that have been able to work from home for like the last 4 years. And it's guys, COVID's over. Get your asses back to the fucking office. Stop wearing sweatpants and eating Cheetos on your lunch break and get your ass back to work, right? That's going to get met with incredible resistance because these people are just, they're used to being able to be lazy, right? And there were moments in the military where we were like that, because it's like, I can't believe like we had a high tempo. So it was like when we were kind of taking a lull, it was like, I think we earned it. But a lot of regular military people, that was particularly like the staff positions, where it's like, what the fuck do you guys do all day? You'd go down to like supply and be like, I got to get a new fucking bump helmet. And they got like a sign posted, from 11 to 2, we're not here. And it's like, where the fuck are you? I have to get a bump helmet for like a evolution we're doing tonight, and I can't get one. Like, you guys are literally supply people. Like, where are you? You know what I mean? But they're these civilian contracts. So it's like that whole culture, I hope to God Vivek and Elon just destroy it, because you should be able to fire people that aren't good workers. Like, why do they have all these unique protections just because they work for the government? If they were here, we would fire their asses in 3 fucking days. You know what I mean? They wouldn't even make it through the first week. You know what I mean? You take a 3-hour lunch break, you go MIA, like, okay, good luck with that. You can go try that. Go work for the U.S. government. They'll love that. You'll be a standout employee over there. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, why. And I'm overgeneralizing, of course. We've had, with Virginia Beach, the economic development, we've had great interactions with them because that's a different department, and they actually work with companies to give you financial incentives to grow in the city. Yep. And they honestly were awesome. They gave us like a big grant for this. So they did their job of incentivizing, growth in business in Virginia Beach as opposed to Chesapeake and Norfolk, et cetera. But then you get over to the people that actually have to approve like the engineering plan and all that. It's a completely different group. They're not linked. Like, economic development can't be like, hey, these guys they're cool. They're with us. Like, give them the fast track. It doesn't work like that. Totally different group of people. None of that shit matters. So we got a cool grant for it because it helps the city, property tax, all these things. We're employing, by then it'll probably be 100 people. So they take all of that into account and we want this business to stay here. So that part's been awesome. So you deal with great individuals, but then you try to approve something, and just because people want to say no to literally fucking everything and make it, a complete pain in the ass, you're 2 years in and you're still, now being told you got to add $900,000 to the freaking site plan, right? But what do? You know what I mean? They have you by the balls. What do they think? I'm going to pull the plug on this over $900,000? No, I can't. We're building this thing, right?
That's crazy.
So anyway, because we already sold this building, we got to be out in 2 years. So we're on the clock, man.
It's coming.
So anyway, hopefully that makes sense.
Well, no, it's cool, and I think it is applicable to. I know I would consider him somewhat of a mentor, but I rented a house from him for a while, and he's extremely successful within commercial real estate, and he says the same thing. He's a well-known developer here in this area, and he's been going to Suffolk for that exact reason. He's like, there's just way less red tape. He can move quick. Now, what he said is, it is funny as you learn to the way you would anything in life, like as you get better and better, and he's been doing it for 35 years, like you learn to navigate very quickly. You learn to like create with certain intentions, knowing that like this will get approved quicker. And he's like, but it fucking sucks. Do you know what I mean? Like that's always in the back of your mind is the approval process. And he's like, you do get better, you do build relationships and stuff, but it's like to hear him talk about it, he shares the same exact frustrations, especially early in his career when he was like, I mean, they were leveraged, and he was trying to make things happen and just getting handcuffed at all stages of it. I think the second biggest that comes to mind as far as background, like outside of the day-to-day of Born Primitive, that's starting to take shape, and for you has been taking shape I mean, it's something you and I know you personally think about for the last 3 or 4 years, is a potential outside investment. You've talked openly that like we've never taken on outside capital other than some initial ones from family. But would love to hear kind of where you're at on that heading into the new year, and what kind of the way forward looks like as we kind of potentially prep to take on somebody or take on outside capital.
Well, I think what a lot of most probably wouldn't realize is that when you are a consumer goods company and you're growing actually makes the owners make less money. That's the irony of it. Because guess what? If your top line revenue is growing, you need more inventory the following year than you did the previous year. So what does that mean?
And
at the end of the year, you got to hire more employees, you got to order more inventory, and all of that cash gets tied up in that. So in a way, you kind of start kicking the can down the road of actually extracting wealth from the organization from an ownership perspective, which when you start the damn thing, that's pretty much the goal. It's okay to say that, right? Now, we have been fortunate that, that of course is the end goal or one of the end goals, but we have found a unique way to leverage the platform to do good while we're on that endeavor. And I would defend that to anyone that would try to dispute that, right? And I think it's pretty clear based on some things we've done. So that's been awesome. I'm not going to sit here and say the goal of the organization isn't to make money, because it is, because I'm a capitalist. I'm never going to apologize for that. But there's other things you can do that, in all the people employed, there's so much good other than just making money. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to that. If you're not making profit, you can't employ people, you can't donate to charity, et cetera, right? So, that's the irony of this is, a little small detail too, is you can't write off inventory until you sell it. So let's say simple math, Tony. Let's say you make $10 million in 1 year. Let's say we get to December and we order $10 million worth of inventory for the next year. Okay. One might think, oh, well, you had a break even year from a cash flow standpoint, right? Okay. So you owe Uncle Sam nothing because you broke even. Not how it works. Uncle Sam says, all right, that $10 million order you just put in doesn't count as an expense until those items on an individual basis get sold. So Uncle Sam says, no, Bear, you made $10 million. Well, shit, I just sent $10 million in the next order. I don't have that money anymore, right? Doesn't matter. So me as a 36.5% owner, guess what I owe Uncle Sam just from those profits? I owe him a check in April or March, whenever it is, for the percentage of 3.65 million in profit, right? That's okay. You owe this. Well, Uncle Sam, hold on. I had to invest that back into the business because like we got to keep the train rolling. We're ripping right now. Like this is a runaway freight train. You know what I mean? But you got to feed it. You know, right? Uncle Sam doesn't care, right? And that's the iron. That's why as you grow, you know what I mean? Now let's say we didn't think we were going to grow, Tony. We got to the end of the year. Let's say you made $10 million and we're like, hey, if we do the same revenue we did last year, I can put in a $5 million order, right? That's now $5 million extra dollars that can go to ownership in the form of distribution. And you can cut a nice little check to the owners and say, right on, good year. Let's do it again, right? But by growing, that inventory buy is bigger, right? So you can't actually pull that cash out of the business. And for us, it's not like we haven't made some money off of the business, but since we've always been growing, every year you're kicking the can down the road to really extract wealth because of how, the inventory write-off thing occurs. That's one of the components of it. But you understand why, like, if you could write it off in the moment, it'd be huge because then you'd be break even. You wouldn't owe any money for taxes, which would be massive. Instead, you have to account for that. And that's why cash flow cash flow can be a very delicate thing to balance, because we now have to plan Born Primitive's cash flow based on the income tax obligations of the individual owners, because it's passed through income to the owners, right? So every quarter we have to pay that quarterly projection. See what I'm saying? So not only do we have to, account for the marketing and the payroll and the inventory orders, well, then we have, hey, Bear, you have that $1.5 million check to Uncle Sam in April for just your quarterly, right? And then in June, you got another one. And then you know what I mean?
And is there any nuance, and I've been a part of these discussions to some degree, but you're certainly more read in. Have we learned as an organization ways to leverage things like line of credit further? But I know there's limitations there too. But so that you're not just dumping that 10 million right back in, and of course you're paying then interest on the capital you're borrowing. But is there, and we're getting in the weeds here, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Line of credit definitely helps.
Yeah.
Because you can write off the interest. And it's a way to say, all right, well, maybe we do a distribution to the owners, and then for the other, amount of money to get to that $10 million inventory buy, like let's pull 5 and pull that from our line of credit, right? That's a way to do it. Some people like really stress their line of credit to do that. And I think we could probably do more of that, but I've always just been a little old school. Like I don't like being in debt.
Yep.
But that is a way, just from a pure ownership standpoint, to extract more wealth from the business while it exists, instead of waiting till the very end. So I frame that up, but so an investment opportunity allows you to take chips off the table. So you don't do this for 20 years and realize, okay, like that could have been 20 years that could have elevated my lifestyle, could have gotten trust funds set up, I could have gotten life insurance policies set up. So like when I'm out of here, my family and hopefully a couple generations are fucking good. Right. So there's a value in doing that early and so waiting to the end. So we're going to obviously pursue an investment. But we've talked about what I would say are like the dangers and perils, particularly private equity. You've built your dream around not having to work for someone, set your own hours. Now, ironically, the hours, while there's flexibility on the day-to-day, ends up being a lot more than you would if you were working for somebody, but there's freedom there. That's why you do it. A lot of guys and girls have buyer's remorse as soon as they do an investment, because guess what? Now you work for someone and you're technically the owner still, but you're not. You know what I mean? As soon as you miss a couple months projections, you got some Harvard MBA who's never built something in his fucking life telling you how to, how he needs this spreadsheet and why did you miss by 2% on here. And that would not work for me, man, because I won't play nice with that guy. You know what I mean? Because the partners come in and they pitch you and, oh, we're going to be a strategic value add and all this. And they act like you're going to be interacting with them. They're just going to pass you off to some guy who's never built a goddamn thing in his life, who thinks he's smarter than you because he got a Harvard MBA, right? And now he has to talk to me. I've been in the trenches for 11 fucking years, and he's trying to tell me all of a sudden because they cut us a check now he knows how to run my fucking business, right? Those are the dangers of doing those deals. So you got to be really careful who you align with. And I think a lot of them will promise this big strategic, oh, well, we have placement in retail and we have this, in-house staff that will help you with your paid advertising. And so you don't have to use your ad agency anymore and all this. And they promise you all these services. And if done right, of course, those are great things. Like, you know what I mean? But a lot of them, they're selling you on it. But once you ink the paperwork, you're like, holy shit, I got duped. And I only know this from talking to a lot of founders who have already done this. Of course, I haven't done it. So this is like, hey man, what were your biggest mistakes? These are the common things I've extracted from those conversations. And there's actually a lot of great podcasts about founders who have gone through investments, and it's such a wealth of knowledge from those experiences, because those are real examples where like you can't dispute that. So we need to be really careful as an organization when we do that, making sure we align with someone that, one, isn't just horrible to work with. Two, if things go south, they'll ride the lightning with us and let us still stay true to who we are as an organization. And most importantly, not making sure we don't waver on the values of who we are as a company. Because there's a few years ago, man, had we done a deal and it was the wrong company, say hello to gender pronouns and born primitive email addresses, vaccine mandates, all the fucking bullshit you all saw all these companies doing, that would have been us. And you would have come to me like, Bear, what the fuck? I saw that memo that we have to have gender pronouns in our email signatures now. What the fuck is that? I'm like, sorry, Tony. They just gave us $40 million. I have to do what they fucking say. They own us. Literally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So thank God, there are now, I think in as things are evolving, there's a little less risk there. But that would absolutely be something if when they're in this room and we're talking, or if it's at the new building, that's going to be a very blunt conversation with them. Because we've done it once, at least on the process. And I know how it works. It's like, all right, fellas, put your chips on the, cards on the table, because we need to make it very fucking clear that at the end of the day, this is Born Primitive is still going to be Born Primitive, and you are not going to corrupt the DNA of this company, because that's what makes it special in the first place. And how much would that suck as you build this thing and then, yeah, you get a nice check and freaking buy a nice house in Bay Colony, where the hell you'd want to do, but then like your company lose its fucking balls, right? Not worth it.
No.
So, the hope is though that you can find someone that adds a strategic value. And I mean, I see, and this is me just talking shit for fun, like having a bigger brand, like buy us, like it would be cool to like, and again, I'm just throwing this out there. Like this is with very little thought, but like a Black Rifle, or
For sure.
like the UFC, or, like, so like an organization, like, yeah, I like how they roll. Like I want to be attached to them, and I want to learn from them, because they're many rungs up on the ladder. And that, like, something like that's an exciting opportunity that I, of course would consider, rather than a PE firm that, just is our professional investors and want to get their money back in 3 to 5 years and then sell it again. You know what I mean? So hopefully when we do it, those opportunities will come up. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Like it. Yeah. And I like, do you know kind of and obviously you see it all the time, kind of bigger companies adding other companies to their portfolio, but there is kind of, it seems like there's a threshold where you're in the billions, all of a sudden that's like acquisitions become a very common thing. But at that, I mean, UFC is huge, Black Rifle's publicly traded. Is that something they are constantly keeping an eye on, or is that just a strategic decision that each kind of like their C-suite is making and board is making, depending on where they're at in their growth stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's case by case, but I think, at that level, looking for strategic acquisitions is something that's probably always top of mind. And also, I think it depends on their own financial situation. Like if they're flush with cash and there's like, hey, there's some unique opportunities to double down on this and acquire some companies that fill a gap, you know what I mean, for us, and there's some synergies, then, but I'm not, obviously super versed on that, but I mean, you see those acquisitions happening all the time. And then, maybe stock price goes up because there's some excitement around the acquisition and this and that. So, there's more, I think in those considerations than just like, where does this organization fit in? But it's that perception, especially when you're public traded, like a lot of it can just be perception, right?
For sure.
I mean, before you know it, you wake up the next morning and stock's up 10%. And if you're a major shareholder, that's a good thing to wake up to. You know what I mean? So
cool. I want to go to mistakes now. So those are some things on the horizon, but from a business perspective or an organization or an individual level, what are some things that you reflect on as potential adjustments you made throughout the year, or if they are as blunt as like, hey, this was a mistake we made? Is there anything that comes top of mind for you there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing we've learned, Tone, like, and this, it's not necessarily a mistake, although it probably is like just sticking to the actual priorities of the organization and not allowing stray voltage of little things to distract the main effort. And that's an ever evolving challenge that we will always be plagued with. Is there's so many opportunities to pursue. There's so many emails we get. Hey, do you want to collab on this? Or do you want to do the supplement thing? And like, you get overwhelmed with like this decision-making loop that requires bandwidth. Because maybe you say, oh yeah, like, you're not really going to do it, but yeah, let's get on a call. We'll do a 30-minute call. And before you know it, your call schedule that day is massive, because you got all these random ankle biter calls that aren't important to the overall organizational success, right? But you take the call, oh, this guy sounds cool, and like, oh yeah, let's see what he has to say. And 19 out of 20 end up being a complete waste of time. And you knew that in the back of your mind anyway, but you did it because you're trying to be nice. And those little things add up over the course of the year, because that is now 30 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever, where you're not focusing on the main effort, right? So you're not focusing on the D-Day campaign. You're not focusing on the Veterans Day campaign, Black Friday, Betsy Ross, Don't Tread on Me shoe launch, all these things, leveling up our apparel, being able to do that little fine tuning that's, helps just that much more. You know what I mean? Like there's an opportunity cost, particularly as the stakes get higher, and particularly for people that are high up in the organization that are tasked with making those big decisions. You know what I mean? So if I'm on a bunch of bullshit calls all week, then like I'm not making high level decisions, keeping the organization going in the right direction and looking out 2 to 3 years, which is my job, right? I have to be the visionary, and I have to kind of, in a way, give that, at least the shell of it, to you guys, and then let you guys make it better, right? So I think that's our biggest lesson learned, and from that is the requirement of leadership to emphasize those priorities, because what I've learned is a lot of times in my mind, it was implied, like, of course, the Savage One training shoe is a priority, guys. Like, we're launching a fucking shoe. But if you don't portray it the right way to people that are below you, there could be some confusion of like, how big is Born Primitive Tactical and Outdoor launch? It's like, no, guys, this is massive. Like, this is going to change our organization, right? And I think, like, sometimes that didn't get appropriately portrayed is the magnanimity of that event. And then it took a couple months to like, all right, guys, like, why is this department of the company not getting its attention? Well, I thought, we wanted to do that jogger launch. And it's like, guys, that's still important, but this is fucking huge. We're launching a shoe. Like, what do you think's more important, But, to give people a little benefit of the doubt is like, they can't read your mind, right? And particularly people that haven't lived this for 11 years, like how would they know that? You know what I mean? So I think it's important for you and me and Mal and everyone else and Claire to set those priorities to the team, so we can say, hey guys, if you get another email about another collab or social giveaway, save yourself the time. Just say no politely and focus on these 3 things. This is the bench, squat, deadlift of Born Primitive right now. That's all that fucking matters. We don't need any accessory lift right now. We're trying to move big boy weight, to use a meathead analogy, right? And I think we've gotten better at that because we're more aware of that now. And I think it shows in some of those campaigns we did where it was this overwhelming success. But even in those moments, I noticed little stray voltage tasks were getting put in the calendar. Particularly, you probably now know, when it's like a big launch week, if someone tries to schedule a meeting with me and it's with a bunch of people and it's completely unrelated, I actually get mad now. No, book it in 2 weeks. There's no fucking way I'm talking about a shoebox when we're about to launch our Veterans Day campaign, where like we're going to be on the news and this is a big fucking deal. I'm not talking about a fucking shoebox. I don't care if it's 20 minutes. Everyone needs to be head down, perfect execution of this campaign, because this is a big fucking deal, right? And that's an actual example, right? And that was Mal, like, we're on great terms, but I went into her office. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. You're trying to book me for a shoebox meeting when like I'm going to New York, I'm doing this. Like, no, like it can wait. That shoe is launching next September. Like, what? Well, we got to get it done. No, we don't. No, we need to execute Veterans Day right now. Nothing else fucking matters. Unless the building is burning, don't fucking book me for a meeting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good insights there that you called out that I think I can add a little color to. Is just the communication part is so big. And I think along with the communication part is the doing your best to identify. It's in here. I'll tie it back actually before I say what I was going to say. Is remember when Patrick Vellner talked about the balloons, meaning like you have a closed container, and I forget the exact analogy, but
it's like a box.
You have a box and you have 4 balloons in it, and the volume is fixed in that box, and all at full inflation, not all 4 balloons can fit in there. And basically what he's saying is that call 1 family, 1 work, 1 working out, and 1 food. And I'm just making up to paint the picture, is that if you're going to blow the workout balloon the whole way up, you're going to have to deflate those other 3. And at any given point in life, there's a combo of those 3. And I actually really, that stuck a lot. And when you're thinking of business, it's very much similar. And why I bring up that analogy is what we've made where you have to be careful too, even as you set priorities, is that you don't overset priorities with deflating other things. You know what I mean? And there's where you say about like, it feels implied to those who have the most information. And that's what I've realized too, of always checking, like, make sure you haven't evolved at a rate that you haven't trickled down the information, because it's making sense to you because you have all the information, but somebody who may not be in the meetings you were in or be in the conversations you're in you may be implying too much that they understand, when in reality they have 10% of what has been discussed in other meetings. So I say that because when setting those priorities, it saves a ton of time too for you to be extremely proactive about where we're taking energy away from. Because there, we've definitely done that. And I wrote down like, more is not always more. And of course, that's like a cliche. But it's so true in business. And as you said, especially with opportunity, is it's so easy for something to work. And then instead of kind of just doubling down in strategy of that and applying it to like maybe future events, you start to, and it's not even being cocky. It's just like, it's almost excitement. You get overexcited and you start to say yes to too many things, and yes to like, oh, well, this worked. Let's do this. And then let's do this. And then all of a sudden you realize the thing that's driving the most success. And I mean, we see that, you see Pareto's law or rule all the time in our inventory, where the top 20% of products are driving 90% of revenue. And that isn't just an inventory thing. That applies to so many things we're doing here. So that's where not only the discipline of defining the volume of each of those balloons and the priority they have, but then it does take an extreme level of discipline to be saying no the majority of the time. Yeah. Now, you should always keep your antenna open for something that's like, okay, there's a ton of upside here without wrecking our priorities and the infrastructure of what we have set up right now. But I will say, if you're not really, really good at saying no, then there's some room to grow there as a leader, because that even in myself, I've watched that evolved over the last 3 or 4 years, as you said, to even just your calendar. You're never being a dickhead, but you become very disciplined with like, hey, just candidly being like, hey, push that a month, or that doesn't need to be a meeting, or meet with these 2 people and then I'll do a 10-minute meeting with you. You get really good at understanding that. And some of that is it just takes experience to learn, like, and self-reflection to realize, whoa, I'm wasting a ton of time doing stuff where I don't add a lot of value. And that's something I've voiced to you a ton, especially on our executive team, is we have to have the self-awareness to know intimately where we add value that other people of the executive team don't. And then we should be focusing 80% of our time there. And there should be the 20% to soundboard ideas and make sure that you're aligned at a senior leadership level. But you should identify those. And it's typically 3 or 4 things. I always recommend the book, The Effective Executive, because it's really good at laying this out. Identifying those things. And this should be a group collaboration where they say like, yeah, Bayer, you are better than anyone at these 3 or 4 things. Tony, you are better than anyone at these 3 or 4 things. I'm not going to get involved in your shit. You go do it. If you need me as a sounding board, come talk to me. So yeah, just a long-winded way. I like what you said, or I like that you called this out as kind of not a mistake, just something we've looked to dial in, because rewind 2 or 3 years, we were still ripping, but like to set up to scale and to set up to really have like a dialed in team, the growth we've made in this area in the last 2 years, it's so much positive effects. And this year has been the biggest one, just as far as growth in this area.
Yeah, and the good thing is it alleviates the burden of the team to not have to take those calls. You know what I mean? Sure. It's like, guys, unless it's these 3 things, and at least in Q4, I mean, you heard me in meetings literally say this, guys. If it's not related to Veterans Day, Betsy Ross, Don't Tread on Me launch, or Black Friday, for the next month, punt it to January. Like, Don't even fucking consider it, because it doesn't fucking matter, right? And I probably said it almost verbatim to that, right? In that, okay, right on. Well, boss just said I can take a call in January for someone reaching out that wants to do whatever. And another thing, you probably get these too. I get a lot of emails now. Hey man, I do this. I'd love to get on a quick call to like discuss how we could collab. And maybe it's a legit organization. And I'm like, all right, dude, I'm not taking 30-minute call just to discover what you want to say to me. So I have to like, it's like, in a way, you got to be a little bit of a dick, but you can word it like respectfully, of course. But hey, man, my time is very limited right now. Please send me a summary of how you see us working together that could benefit both organizations. And once I see that, if I feel like there's an opportunity there, then we can set up a call. That typically 5 times out of 10, you don't get a response after that, right? Which shows you how brutal it was already. And then 4 out of the other 10 is something you would never do. And then you can just politely say, hey man, now's not the right time. Wish you the best. Hope you guys crush business. Always keep it positive. And there's the 1 out of 10, you're like, right on. That's actually pretty freaking cool. Let's do it. Get with my assistant. Let's do 30 minutes. We'll get it booked next week, and look forward to talking with you. And then you fire and forget, you're on to the next thing. But if you do all 10 of those, imagine what that becomes. So I've had to learn that the hard way because I was making everyone accessible to me because I wanted to be nice. Oh, okay, yeah, and I knew there's no interest. I'm not going to do it. So now when you put it on them, all right, no bullshit. Tell me exactly what you have in mind, and then I'll make the decision.
Well, and there's a time, and I want to distinguish because there is a value to networking, but there's a very distinct difference between what you're saying and networking. A true networking thing is like you realize that two personalities or your life experience align in a way that like, hey, let's and I'll just use the call example. Like, let's hop on a 30-minute call just to introduce ourselves and say, hey man, like you got my number, you got my email. If you ever need anything, like reach out. That may seem like, oh, well, those people, they're never going to reach out and be like, well, let's do something right now. When businesses or say like and I don't want to say it's always a lower level or like a manager reaches out with a collaboration request, what that ends up doing mentally is you hop on a call. Then it's like, well, we could probably do this thing together. So then you start to action it. And then you realize you're 2 months in and you're like, we're still dragging this thing out and we're going to do something that like is not going to move the needle at all. So I just want to like make that distinction because there is a value to networking and building a network, but it shouldn't be a time suck. It should be very quick. Like even if you go get a coffee with somebody local, a lot of it now is remote and just, hey, here's what we're doing over here. Like if there's ever a big opportunity, let's talk. Most of the time, then if that person, especially if they're seasoned, what I found, if there's somebody that's seasoned in the business space, like if they're reaching out, it's very specific intent. It's very like how we're going to work together, and they understand the not making it a time suck. So just an 100%. Interesting distinguishing factor there because networking can provide leverage down the road.